This is the time. Once for all.
I'm gonna determine which Sony mirrorless camera is the best for wedding photography.
And I tried them all. I've shot entire wedding seasons with these cameras, or at least a couple of weddings, or at least a couple of shoots, wedding shoots. That is why I am going to tell you.
Me, magic wedding photographer.
Okay, but for real, yes, I did try them all, and I have pretty good understanding of pros and cons of each of the current generation of Sony mirrorless cameras, and I'm going to present this to you today so you can make the best decision purchasing new camera or upgrading to a new camera in the Sony ecosystem. The four contestants are Sony A7 IV, Sony A7R V, Sony A1, and Sony A9 Mark III. I wish the decision was like really straightforward. I wish it was like this camera is the best, period. Buy this one. Sadly, it is not. But I can tell you for sure that each one of these cameras is more than capable to actually photograph weddings with them. I made a poll on Threads some time ago asking my audience about the opinion which of the Sony camera is the best for wedding photography, and I presented 4 of these cameras. And I'll let you think about what the audience said, and then I'm going to present the results in 3, 2, 1, and yes, Sony A7 IV took majority of votes, and the second place will be Sony A7R V, because this is the best ratio of how much you spend and what you're getting with the camera. And let me start with this camera, Sony A7 IV. I've shot with this entire 2022 wedding season, and everything about this camera works perfectly for wedding photography. We have 33 megapixels, the best image resolution in my opinion, so 30-ish megapixels. It's my sweet spot. We have amazing tracking, autofocus, more than capable for most of the stuff that you're dealing on the wedding day. We have great ISO performance. I felt super comfortable shooting up to ISO 12,800 with zero stress. We have 2 card slots. One is the super fast CF Type A, one is the SD card, so that's a limitation, but still that's not much. And then we have up to 10 frames per second when, shooting compressed RAWs. And all of this make perfect sense for wedding photography with just 2 downsides. And actually for wedding photography, we could say one downside being the silent shutter on this camera is, in my opinion, not usable throughout the entire wedding day, or in certain situations that you actually might want to use it. So silent shutter in this camera, meaning electronic shutter, will sadly give you the banding effect, so those dark stripes across the frame when shooting under certain artificial light. And usually this is the light in the spaces that you want to use the silent shutter. So in my cases, it's like, for example, church church ceremony is the type of the ceremony. I would love to be completely silent and not have to like clap, clap, clap with each of my frame. But sadly, none of the churches have like a daylight. They all have artificial light, and the majority of these churches, at least here in Europe, they have very bad artificial lighting, meaning they have cheap LEDs, mixed lighting, mixed colors, everything is mixed, and then these types of light will produce banding in our images when using electronic shutter. And the second big limitation of the Sony A7 IV for weddings is when you want to go hybrid, when you want to shoot photo and video, and you want to use 4K 50, which I think is a standard for now, especially if you want to add, hybrid coverage. So you're taking photos and then you want to switch your camera and start filming. Like preferably you want to use 50 frames per second or 60 frames per second if you're in the US, because you want to slow down the footage later on. But this you can only achieve with crop. So that changes everything when you have a lens on your camera. So that camera is not ideal for that photo video hybrid coverage unless you can live with that crop. And all of the images I'm showing are edited with my Magic Cadabra preset. If you're interested in that, you can purchase down below. So I will half agree with my audience on Threads saying that yes, this is actually the best camera for wedding photography from Sony for the price. The price is $2,500 and it's like really hard to beat compared to all the other cameras. For those of you building from zero, I would highly recommend starting with A7 IV. It's going to be more than capable for most of the stuff that you might need from it. And then I would rather spend more money on lenses than getting a better camera. Having said that, the next option being A7R5, which I personally slightly changed my opinion on this camera after using it for an entire year last season. So A7R5 is clearly a better camera from A7 IV, like at almost everything. You have better viewfinder, better screen, both in terms of resolution and the operation. It just flips, rotates, and all of that stuff. The body itself, it does feel slightly more bulky. It's slightly heavier body, and you will feel that, which I think it's a comfortable feeling actually having slightly heavier cameras. A7 IV felt like really kind of light and shallow to me when I was using it. But obviously those nice upgrades like screen and so on, these are like operation upgrades. Like it's not gonna change what you're getting the image wise from the camera. It's like obviously nice upgrades. It's nice to have a better camera in terms of a screen, viewfinder, faster cards, and so on. So what about those performance upgrades? What is better in Sony A7R5 specifically for wedding photographers? Like for sure, there's the better autofocus system. We have the AI unit, which now allows you to focus on face, even if the face is back to you, even if you don't see exactly the face of the person. Camera can read that this is the person, it recognizes so-called the body structure, and it knows where the face is. And that can be really handy. And in certain situations, I know I could take like a more sharp image in the right place than I would take with A7 IV, but that difference is still insignificant in my opinion. It's not that you're now gonna take 20%, 30% like more better photos or something like that. Not at all. I think you're like pretty much getting all the same photos with maybe a couple images per wedding that are sharp, and with Sony A7 IV could be less sharp or could be focused on something else. Maybe you were using 51.2 and the focus would be on the not exactly eyes because they were hidden. But with other upgrades, you do have now 4K without crop. So you can switch back and forth shooting video and shooting 4K 50. But that's something that my friend Taylor, who's really great at doing hybrid coverage, photo and video, says for him A7R5 is slightly too slow when changing back and forth, because if you shoot like a bunch of photos, like full resolution photos, and you want to switch back, you have a waiting time until these photos are going to be recorded on the memory card. But still, now you have the option to film 4K 50, which is significant performance boost. Oh, and I almost forgot the most important thing is that now we have 61 megapixels. So it's twice as many pixels as Sony A7 IV, which is both good and bad. So 61 megapixels, obviously something that if you are a wedding photographer who also shoots a studio stuff, who also shoots commercial stuff, and you need those megapixels, that's amazing. You have 61, that's plenty. That's plenty for product photography. You have all these details. The image is just so sharp. But for just weddings, I do feel that 61 is just way too much. Like, you don't necessarily want to see all those details on the face when you're shooting portrait of the bride. And I'm talking perfect skin faces. Zoomed in, 61 megapixels, you still see stuff that I think the person on the other side of the camera don't want to see on their face. It's like putting a loop or a microscope to your freaking face. And the second reason why I feel like for weddings, if you just shoot weddings, 61 megapixels is just too much, is the whole workflow. You're shooting thousands of photos and sometimes tens of thousands of photos. So shooting 61 megapixels all the time means a lot of memory cards, means a lot of hard drives, means a lot of backup hard drives, archives. All of that just grows with the amount of files that you're generating with each wedding. And I could feel that for sure. But then something that changed my perspective on A7R5 was introduction of a medium RAWs. That was something that didn't exist on Sony A7R V before the upgrade, and for R5 it actually made me want to shoot medium RAWs. So medium RAWs is a format that can shoot 26 megapixels, and while I wish it was 30, 26 is still, it's a good number. You know, it's a good number for wedding photography. So I personally shot most of my wedding days using that 26 megapixels, and only sometimes when I was shooting like a bigger groups, when I was shooting some more, you know, landscape portraits, when I needed to show more things, I would just switch to 61 megapixels. So I knew I can either crop in or I can just use that, you know, power of sharpness from corner to corner of the image. And then what made me even more happy when shooting Sony A7R V with medium RAWs is that you can quickly switch to APS-C mode, meaning you're now cropping from entire full frame to just a part of the frame, and you're also getting 26 megapixel files. So my workflow would be shooting with 2 primes and being able to switch from like 24mm to 35-ish when using APS-C while retaining the same size of the file. The same with 50, that would become 77, 85, that would become 130. I have whole videos about that crop functionality, and I think it just works great when you want to use smaller files on a camera like this. And then again, whenever I needed a full resolution, whenever I needed full 61 megapixels, I just had it on my mode dial and I could just quickly switch to it and just shoot full resolution, full madness of 61 megapixels. So what are the downsides of Sony A7R V? Actually pretty much the same as A7 IV. You cannot use silent shutter. It's even worse on A7R V versus A7 IV. So you have a massive rolling shutter effect, and then you might get banding under certain artificial light. And here also the ISO performance, because we're using higher megapixel camera, is slightly worse than A7 IV. So for me personally, it would mean that I would feel it whenever I was going over 6400. I was slightly more aware of how I expose image. So I was just less comfortable shooting ISO 8000. I was slightly less comfortable shooting ISO 12800. Like I was just more aware that I'm shooting high ISO, so I could just compensate with the proper exposure compared to shooting like really easily with A7 IV, not even thinking about this. So yeah, is it better than Sony A7 IV? Yes, it is. You know, like majority of features, performance, everything feels better, but not that much better. So the question when choosing these two cameras comes down, in my personal opinion, to the fact that you need those megapixels or not. Because if you don't need them, you can stick with A7 IV, and that difference, there's a $1,500 difference between these two cameras. Like you can spend on an amazing G Master lens and have A7 IV with like a awesome G Master versus A7R V in the same price. Okay, time to talk the big boys. A1, A9 Mark III. Now we're getting into that upper $5,000 range in terms of price. And before I do that, quick shout out to the sponsor of this segment, which is PicTime. If you are a wedding photographer and you're not using PicTime to deliver your images to your clients, go right now to the link in the description and just sign up for a free trial and check it out. Like, I cannot stress enough how important it is the way we deliver the images these days. Like, we work online these days. Sending a link to a Dropbox or Google Drive just doesn't feel right with the service that we're providing. While PicTime offers beautiful gallery with tons of features, including my recent favorite, which is the face search for your clients. So now you can enable for your guests of the gallery to search for specific people in the photos, and it works bananas. It can find a person even when they are in the background and back to the camera. It's insane how good it is. And your guests can also now search for the moments like dancing or objects like flowers. And on top of that, PicTime offers built-in store, so you can sell digital products with zero hassle. You just choose a lab, products, you set prices, and boom, your clients can order prints directly from the gallery. And then my probably most used features of PicTime, which is slideshow tool. You can now create slideshows in PicTime, and blog tool. You can now create beautifully looking designed blogs and embed them on your website within that one service. So it's truly all in one service. So many features. And if you use code MAGIC on top of that free trial month, you'll get one more free month on me. Okay, back to the cameras. Now let's talk Sony A1. This is actually the oldest camera of the bunch, but very powerful still to this day. And also we are just about to receive an update to it after almost 3-4 years after the launch. We get the update to bring some newer features to Sony A1 so it doesn't feel so old. But this is a power horse, and I truly mean that. So we're talking a higher megapixel camera, 50 megapixels, very fast camera, 30 frames per second. And we are talking a shutter that actually can be used in silent mode, like no matter what type of lighting we have. So now we're crossing that barrier. Two first cameras, they cannot shoot silent really comfortably. These two cameras I'm going to talk about now, they can shoot silent really comfortably. So if the silent shooting is your priority, you're choosing between one of these two I'm going to talk about now. So you get 30 frames per second using electronic shutter with A1, or 20 frames per second using mechanical shutter. And mechanical shutter in A1 is the top of the top in terms of design of the shutter type. First of all, you can sync with flash up to 1/400 of a second. So instead of 1/250 being the sync limit, 1/400 is the sync limit for this type of shutter. But also, like, the sound of this shutter is my favorite sound of the shutter of all the cameras I have ever shot with.
This is insane.
It's actually that silent. That's why I can comfortably shoot with mechanical shutter like all the time, basically. And autofocus system, while it is not equipped with the AI unit like A7R5, so it does not focus on the face when it doesn't see the face. So that is a limitation. That is a limitation of this camera being slightly older, but still that autofocus performance is superior to A7 IV, and in many cases that's also experience from my fellow photographer Joseph Radhik, who's been shooting A7R5 and A1 next to each other at the same events. He told me that at some certain scenarios A1 is just going to focus better and more accurate than A7R5, specifically when it gets darker. So that is like his personal testimonial, which I trust fully. From my experience, the A1 autofocus is just exceptional. Again, it does not focus on the face when it does not see the face, so that's the hardware limitation of not having the AI unit, but still the whole performance, it has to hold up when shooting up to 30 frames per second with the autofocus, you know, with a lens like, let's say 50 millimeters f1.2. You can shoot people walking towards you at that speed at f1.2 and still get sharp images when they're supposed to be sharp. And the video capabilities of these cameras, so now we're talking 4K 120 or even 8K 30 with like all the bells and whistles. And now with the firmware update coming, we also get the focus breathing compensation. So this camera is a power horse for everything that could be related to shooting wedding, to shooting hybrid wedding, to shooting studio sport. It still feels like the one. So what about downsides? I feel like one of the major downsides is, in my opinion, I still have the same opinion as last year when doing this type of video A1. I believe that the screen just feels so old. So this is the old type of Sony screen. It doesn't flip, doesn't rotate, it only goes up and down, which is slightly a bummer, and it's a lower resolution than all the newest cameras. So it's the same resolution as A7 IV, which is okay-ish, but just personally, I feel like this screen is just so much behind, especially at this price point. And the second downside would be just price. So, you know, for most of wedding photographers, I feel like this price is just beyond reasonable. I know many photographers who went for A1 and just couldn't be happier because this is amazing camera. So by all means, if you are shooting high-end stuff, or you can just simply afford because you need to, you know, lower your tax and stuff like that, you will be more than happy with A1 if you can live with that screen, which most of photographers can live with that screen. Everything else about this camera is perfect. I used this camera on multiple occasions in the last couple of years, and every single time I use it, I just have a major crash, and I feel like, should I just get rid of all of my cameras and just buy A1s? It's just so tempting for what this camera has to offer. But still, because of how old this camera now is and the price that you're be paying for it, just feels like a bad economic decision. And that lead me with the last contestant, which is the newest Sony camera, which is A9 Mark III, something that I was personally waiting for, feeling that this might be the one. This might be the one for every wedding photographer. If they can just bring all the new features to Sony A9 Mark series, it can be amazing. So does A9 Mark III deliver that promise? Yes and no. Again, if it would be only that simple, just get this camera and this is going to be perfect. So like probably if A1 would be $3,000, I would say get this one. This is the camera, but it's not. It's $6,500. And now we have A9 Mark III that is $5,500. So also quite insane price for a wedding photography camera. And in many cases overkill for weddings, but in many cases just so perfect for weddings. So again, now we're talking 24 megapixels. So we're back into the low range of megapixels. This is not high megapixel camera, but it has amazing feature of global shutter that brings you the features that are just simply not possible with any of three cameras that I just mentioned. First being you can shoot 120 frames per second, and we're talking full RAW files. We're talking autofocus working. This is bananas. This is simply bananas. We're being fair with each other right now, and I'm telling you, there's not many occasions at wedding where you're gonna use that. Again, I need to mention my friend Joseph because he posted this reel showing actually perfect use case for 120 frames per second. So obviously, there are certain situations, there are like confetti drop, like there are certain moments that have zero control over what's happening in front of the frame, and having option to be able to just go full burst at 120 frames per second. First of all, is going to create that amazing animation that you can use, right? This looks awesome, but also it will lead you to be able to take that one frame that is actually freaking best in terms of, you know, things happening on the faces of your subjects and so on. So you can just pick the best frame possible. So that is option that you clearly don't have with any of these cameras. Like 30 frames per second with A1 is plenty. It will also give you amazing results, but 120 is 4 times more. And the second huge feature that I believe is gonna get even more popular this wedding season is the possibility to sync flash at practically every shutter speed. So we're talking global shutter that can sync with your flash at, let's say, 1/8,000 of a second. It can sync with your flash at 1/16,000 of a second. And if you're thinking, okay, but how can I use that? The answer is obvious. If you're shooting flash outdoors and you want to overpower the sun, now you can just simply do it with shutter speed, which was previously just not possible. You needed to use ND filters, you needed to use high f-stop, and you needed to blast your flash at like maximum power to just overpower the ambient light outdoors on a sunny day. Now you can just crank up the shutter speed to 1/16,000 of a second, still use your lens wide open, still kill that ambient light and get that flashlight, not overpowering your unit itself. That's amazing feature. But again, if you need this feature or if you feel like you need this feature. Oh, and speaking about that direct flash, if you want to learn more about flash, I have amazing online course, Flash for Wedding Photographers, called Flash Magic. It's a great course if you want to learn how to use flash on a wedding day. So these two are just clear advantages of this camera. So you only can get this with that A9 Mark III. What about the flaws? Do we have any flaws? So one flaw being the lowest ISO, base ISO, is ISO 250. Does it bother me personally? No, because I can use a faster shutter speed. So I don't see a big problem here. The bigger problem is the image quality or ISO performance at higher ISO. So we are talking performance that is not as good as the previous A9 cameras. So it's not as good as A9 Mark II. It's closer to A7R5. So we're talking more about that, the same image quality that we're getting from high megapixel camera in terms of the noise at higher ISOs. And I guess the price, like we are talking very expensive camera again. still giving you a lot of functionalities, but the question is, and that's always going to be the question, what is that you need and what are your top priorities when choosing a Sony cameras for your wedding photography journey? As you can see, like each one of these cameras, they have unique features. Each of them have unique features. So Sony A7 IV, the unique feature is that it's cheap. That's the unique feature. It's cheap and it's like more than capable for shooting weddings. A7R5, the unique feature is that it's quite well priced hybrid camera, high megapixel, perfect for weddings, perfect for studio, perfect for video, right? Like you have like that kind of all-in-one camera when you're going for A7R5. A1 unique feature is going to be high megapixel while high speed and being able to use silent shutter. None of these cameras can do what Sony A1 can do. And then A9 Mark III unique feature is going to be that 120 frames per second and that flash sync speed. But we're talking lower megapixel camera and lower image quality. So you see, like all of them, they have something that is their unique selling point of that camera. So once again, I believe it comes down to a simple couple questions. First one being, do you need megapixels? Yes or no? Yes, I need megapixels. You're choosing between A7R5 or A1. If you need silent, you're going for A1. If you just need like a good all-around camera, you're going with A7R5. And then the second question is the silent shutter your priority? If silent shutter is your priority, you are choosing between Sony A9 Mark III and Sony A1, with the difference being this one will give you more megapixels and this one will give you a faster speed and flash sync speed. So two simple questions, megapixels and silent shutter will actually answer everything for you. And then third, obviously, if you're on a budget and you just need like really well-priced camera, you're getting A7 IV and you're spending the rest of the money you have on lenses, accessories, and so on. It's as simple as that. I hope that was clear. Please let me know down in the comments what camera are you shooting and what do you feel is the perfect camera for your type of wedding photography. I'm always curious about you guys, and thanks so much for watching. I will see you very soon. Ciao.